Great, thank you. And good afternoon, everyone. My name is Callan Evans, and I'm the American Rescue Plan Training and Knowledge Management Specialist with AmeriCorps Seniors. I'm also joined by Robin Correndo, who is the Deputy Director with AmeriCorps Seniors, and will be helping to field questions during the webinar. We want to thank everyone for joining us today for the AmeriCorps Seniors American Rescue Plan Senior Demonstration Program in Action, Mobilizing a Generation webinar. This is part of several technical assistance webinars for the American Rescue Plan Senior Demonstration Program competition. As a quick reminder, this event is being recorded, and the recording will be posted to the competition page on the AmeriCorps website. Today's webinar will provide a quick review of the AmeriCorps and AmeriCorps Seniors, then some key elements of the American Rescue Plan Senior Demonstration Program, or ARP-SDP grant competition, followed by a review of some SDP program ideas you could consider, and close with a quick recap and time for you to ask us any additional questions you may have. One caveat about questions: because this is competitive, there are a few questions we cannot answer, such as if your question is specific or requires a lot of context and discussion. We can help you get the information you need to understand rules, requirements, and tools available, but it is up to you to put together your best application for this process. So before we jump into the presentation, we wanted to start with a couple of quick polls to learn a bit more about who we have joining us today. So for our first question is, how would you describe the primary field of your organization? Is it aging, volunteerism, community development, faith-based organizations, higher education, state, county, municipal, or other local government, or something else? So thank you to everyone who is completing the poll. I can see some of your responses coming in. We'll give everyone just a couple more seconds to submit their response. All right, so we can go ahead and close this poll. So it looks like the majority of you focus on something else, with a lot of you focusing on aging as well as volunteerism. So thank you for participating in the first poll. And then for our second question is, have you attended any of our other webinars? Yes, no, or you're not sure. All right, so I see the questions are coming in. It's about a 50-50 split between yes and no. All right, so we can go ahead and end that poll. And looks like the no's won out, so at 49%, this is your first webinar, so welcome. So again, no matter who you are or where you are, again, you're welcome here today, so thank you for joining us. So now I want to take a moment to just provide a brief review of AmeriCorps and AmeriCorps Seniors. AmeriCorps, formerly known as the Corporation for National and Community Service, is the federal agency responsible for civic engagement. That means we lead civic engagement through service and volunteerism, through grant-making efforts and national days of service in the United States. We help millions of Americans improve their lives and the lives of their fellow citizens through service. We do that mostly by working hand in hand with local partners to tap the ingenuity and can-do spirit of the American people to tackle our country's most pressing challenges. So our mission is to improve lives, strengthen communities, and foster civic engagement through this service and volunteering. AmeriCorps Seniors connects Americans who are 55 and older with the people and organizations that need them the most. We help them become mentors, coaches, or companions of people in need, or contribute their job skills and expertise to community projects and organizations. Volunteers receive guidance and training so they can make a contribution that suits their talents, interests, and availability. Conceived during John F. Kennedy's presidency, AmeriCorps Seniors currently links more than 200,000 Americans to service opportunities. Their contributions of skills, knowledge, and experience make a real difference to individuals, nonprofits, faith-based, and other community organizations throughout the United States. The AmeriCorps Seniors overall framework is based on community programs and community partnerships, and because of you, we do that really well. AmeriCorps Seniors plans to use this opportunity with ARP to build on that framework. We know we can build on AmeriCorps Seniors programs' local impact by partnering with communities to find solutions to their challenges by building equity into the agency's grant-making process and through serving communities that have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. As we go through this presentation, we are asking that you look to see where we can partner together. AmeriCorps Seniors' goal is to partner with new organizations who are not only supporting COVID-19 mitigation and recovery efforts, but are also committed to increasing the number of AmeriCorps Seniors volunteers to reopen and rebuild our communities together. If you want to learn more about AmeriCorps and AmeriCorps Seniors, please check out the technical assistance webinar titled Introducing AmeriCorps, AmeriCorps Seniors and its Programs on the competition website. A link to that page has also been posted to the chat box. So in this section, we'll do just a quick review of the ARP SDP grant competition. The Senior Demonstration Programming, or SDP, which is governed by the Senior Demonstration Authority, allows us to expand our reach by funding innovative programs in a way that's different from our standard 3 programs, which are the Foster Grandparent Program, or FGP program, Senior Companion Program, or SCP, and the RSVP program. For example, an SDP program may have seniors serving kids with exceptional needs and their parents, providing tips or homework assistance tips. The expectation is that these programs will be carried out by seniors and demonstrate the power of senior volunteers to make significant contributions in their communities as they recover and reopen after the pandemic. So as a reminder, here's a list of past and upcoming training and technical assistance webinars available to you. In addition to today's event, we have one more webinar that's scheduled for January 18th at 3 p.m. Eastern, which is titled Understanding National Performance Measures. These sessions are designed to give you information to assist in increasing your knowledge of our programs, best practices, and how to respond to requests for funding. We are accepting applications now for the Senior Demonstration Program, and applications are due by 5 p.m. Eastern Time on February 3rd, 2022. The AmeriCorps Seniors American Rescue Plan Senior Demonstration Program Phase 3 notice opened on November 1st of 2021, and it is our call for new applicants or those who do not currently have an active grant with AmeriCorps Seniors to submit applications for the FY 2022 AmeriCorps Seniors American Rescue Plan Senior Demonstration Program, or American Rescue SDP funds. AmeriCorps Seniors will be programming our ARP funding in accordance with Section 231 of the Domestic Volunteer Service Act of 1973, or DVSA, which authorizes the Director of AmeriCorps Seniors to make grants to public and nonprofit organizations for the purposes of demonstrating innovative activities involving older Americans as volunteers and for testing whether American volunteer programs may contribute to new objectives or certain national priorities. The specific legal authority for the Senior Demonstration Grant is Chapter 42 of the United States Code, Section 5028. AmeriCorps Seniors refers to this legal authority as Senior Demonstration Authority. By exercising this authority, AmeriCorps Seniors can encourage innovation as communities recover and build back better. Unlike other AmeriCorps Seniors funding opportunities, this opportunity is open for anywhere in the country. Appendix A for this competition provides a list of areas where AmeriCorps Seniors is prioritizing funding. However, all applications submitted for any area in the country are available for funding through this opportunity. We will go through a bit more about Appendix A and other competition resources in the next few slides. So let's talk about some of the resources that you may want to review. You may have questions such as, what is the application deadline? What are the program funding priorities? What are the eligibility requirements and what documents are required? Most of the answers to your questions are included in the document that is called the Notice of Funding, or Nofo. As you know, we love our acronyms. So this is your gateway to the competition. You can find this on the competition page by clicking on AmeriCorps Seniors American Rescue Plan Senior Demonstration Program, then click on the link for the Nofo. We'll also put a direct link to the Nofo in the chat box. And on the next slide, we'll go into just a couple more resources in detail as well. So this slide lists available resources to help you with your application. The Notice of Funding Opportunity, or Nofo, which should be the first document you review as it establishes the competition, application requirements, evaluation criteria, funding priorities, and more. There's also the application instructions, which provides a step-by-step guide to navigate our electronic grants management system, which we call eGrants. Appendix A, Geographical Service Area, is a list of priority funding areas. Please note that while applicants are encouraged to propose programming in the priority service areas identified in Appendix A, you can propose programming in any county, city, or town. Appendix B, performance measures, summarizes the performance measure requirements, such as the allowable outputs and outcomes. Technical assistance calls and recordings provide a list of webinars offered, and this is the section that you will find the recordings for the webinar like the one we're having today. And then we also have a frequently asked questions section. This document is updated periodically and provides more information on specific questions that we have received. So as a reminder, through the American Rescue SDP funding opportunities, applicants must demonstrate how they will engage adults age 55 and older to address one or more of the American Rescue SDP priorities. These next few slides will cover highlights from the Nofo. I will not go into great detail during this webinar on that, but if you have questions about the Nofo, we invite you to review the technical assistance recording titled Tour of the Notice of Funding, which will review the Nofo in greater detail. So just to make sure we're on the same page, this funding opportunity is available to organizations that are new to AmeriCorps seniors, meaning you have never received a grant from AmeriCorps seniors, or your organizations may have received an AmeriCorps seniors grant in the past, but do not currently have an active grant. Because these are ARP funds, we're looking for efforts that help local communities recover from the COVID-19 pandemic and are interested in applications that establish or support education, which may include learning loss during the summer or last year's academic year, or vaccination and vaccination education efforts, especially in hard to reach communities. And we are interested in applications that are actively engaged in removing structural racial inequities, advancing racial equity, and increasing opportunities to achieve sustainable changes in communities. As already mentioned, applicants may propose programming in any county, city, or town, and are encouraged but not required to propose programming in the priority areas that are identified in Appendix A. These priorities were selected because we specifically know that these communities are high poverty or have low vaccination rates and will receive priority funding, funding priority. So these next slides review the Nofo focus areas and the programs being prioritized. You can see that this programming connects directly back to the COVID-19 pandemic and our recovery from it. We have access to care, healthy futures, focused on increasing access to care and public health education opportunities in hard to reach communities or historically underserved communities. This includes, but is not limited to, establishing and supporting contact tracing, vaccination sites, providing vaccination education, transportation, and registration. Education for intergenerational programming that engages older adults in supporting students and families in successful transition and returning to the classroom, and strengthen social emotional learning of students to increase school readiness and K-12 success post-pandemic. Veteran and military families to improve the quality of life for veterans and improve the well-being of military families, and aging in place, independent living supporting communities in historically underserved, marginalized, and adversely impacted by persistent poverty and inequality to increase the independent living for older adults and or individuals with disabilities. So the Nofo calls to attention activities such as companionship to deal with bereavement and provide support due to a loss of a loved one during this pandemic. We also have access to care for substance abuse, which focuses on access to care and participation in health education to prevent or reduce substance abuse. Addressing food insecurity with applications to increase access to healthy food in underserved communities. Aging in place, elder justice for applications that protect seniors who may be victims of financial fraud and abuse or neglect. Particularly as communities emerge from COVID-19 pandemic, we are aware of the increase in the number of scams and how our community members are being targeted. And we also have economic opportunity, workforce development to establish or support programs designed to increase the number of economically disadvantaged individuals receiving job training or other skill development services. And for our last three, we have economic opportunity, financial knowledge, which are applications that improve financial literacy and utilizing savings plans. Economic mobility for communities experiencing persistent unemployment or underemployment, and students experiencing homelessness or those in foster care. And lastly, digital and information literacy to increase the number of underserved or economically disadvantaged individuals having opportunity and access to develop skills to use online resources. So now let's take a look at some of the performance measure highlights. These can be found in section A.3 of the Nofo, as well as Appendix B. For all of our grant making, including this ARP SDP competition, all applicants are required to use national performance measures as part of a comprehensive performance measurement strategy that relies on both performance and evaluation data to learn from their work and make tactical and strategic adjustments to achieve their goals. Applicants must identify a primary focus area, and the work plan must include service activities in that selected primary focus area. And we'll talk a little bit about work plan on the next slide. So this funding opportunity requires applicants to demonstrate cost-effective practices in achieving performance goals through the services described in a work plan. Work plans must meet the following minimum requirements. For volunteer assignments that are non-stipended, for every $1,000 in federal funding, at least one unduplicated volunteer must be placed in work plans that result in national performance measure outcomes for the selected focus area. Unduplicated volunteers means each volunteer can only be counted once when assigned to a service activity and should be counted in the areas where they will make the most impact. So things in terms of focus, type of service, or scope of service, such as the number of hours worked. For volunteer assignments that are for stipended programs, for every $7,500 in federal funding, at least one volunteer service year, or VSY, must be placed in work plans. A volunteer service year is a budget term which equals 1,044 hours of volunteer service activity. The stipend cost per VSY is calculated by multiplying the number of hours served by the current cost per hour for the stipend. So for more information on performance measures, we invite you to join us for the webinar titled Understanding the National Performance, which is going to be on Tuesday, January 18th at 3 p.m. Eastern. And registration for this webinar can be found on our competition website. So in this section, we're going to just do a brief review of the senior demonstration program ideas that you could consider. So as we mentioned earlier, by exercising the AmeriCorps Seniors Demonstration Program Authority, AmeriCorps seniors can encourage innovation. As we know, COVID-19 does not have a roadmap, and we want to allow grantees and communities to bring us new ideas. So in example 1, an applicant could demonstrate that by increasing the income eligibility to 400% below the poverty index, they're able to place more volunteers in service and better meet community needs. In example number 2, an organization could propose to demonstrate that by developing small support groups, such as book groups or tea clubs for seniors led by a volunteer, the impact of the volunteer service is increased and that those participants can feel less isolated. For example 3, an applicant could propose a new partnership with their local city or county health officials to establish a health education outreach project to reach disproportionately impacted communities by COVID. And knowing COVID outreach is still needed in some communities, the goal would be to determine or demonstrate that AmeriCorps seniors volunteers, who are often seen as trusted community leaders, will be able to bring health education tools and resources to high-risk populations. And example number 4, an organization could be interested in partnering with a local job training program to bring skilled volunteers who can mentor job seekers who are looking to develop new jobs as their communities reopen after the pandemic. The organization could want to demonstrate their anticipated impact, plus also the fact that they can mobilize senior volunteers to support the proposed service area while building strong community partnerships. So these are just some examples to get your thoughts flowing about program models or types of things that you could propose. So now we are going to move into just a brief recap and the Q&A portion. So as part of our recap, we have 2 poll questions for you. The first one is, when are applications due? So is it January 31st, 2022 at 5 p.m. my local time zone, January 31st, 2022 at 5 p.m. Eastern, February 3rd, 2022 at 5 p.m. my local time, or February 3rd, 2022, no later than 5 p.m. Eastern time? And I can see the questions are coming in. Overwhelmingly, you all have selected February the 3rd, 2022, no later than 5 p.m. Eastern. So you can go ahead and end the poll. And that is correct. That is the deadline. February 3rd, 2022, no later than 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And then the next question is, if you have questions, you can send them to American Rescue SDP at cns.gov, your AmeriCorps portfolio manager near you, me, or the CEO of AmeriCorps or the director of AmeriCorps Seniors. So I see that your responses are still coming in. All right, we can go ahead and close that poll. So 79% of you are correct. It is the American Rescue SDP at cns.gov. That is where you would direct any questions that you may have about this opportunity. All right. So just before we open up the Q&A, we have a really quick disclaimer. There may be some questions that we cannot answer today because this is a grant competition. So we cannot provide individual coaching or advice. Again, this is a competitive process. We want to get great applications and we want to make sure that it is fair to everyone that is involved. So we can't tell you what to put in your application. I can't tell you whether to start your program this way or that way. That is really all up to you as applicants. But we can help you understand the rules and requirements and tools available. But again, it is up to you to put together your best application for this process. So if you do have any questions, and I can see that some of you have added them in so far, please use the Q&A box and we'll do our best to answer as many questions as possible. And again, if we cannot get to your question, or if you think of something after this event, then you can email us at americanrescuesdp@cns.gov, which you can see on the screen. All right, Robin, you ready for questions?
I think so. Yep, go for it. I'm trying to keep up in the chat room. Go for it. Yep.
All right.
So maybe I could pose one to you, Kellen, if that's okay.
Sure, I'll do my best to answer it.
Well, we'll get it between the two of us, right? Is there a minimal number of volunteers that have to be applied for? The question is regarding how many volunteers are required to be in the program?
Robin, I will kick that one back to you.
Yep.
Answer that question.
Yep. So folks, there's the minimum amount of funding we are awarding is $100,000. And so you'll see that I think it's section B2 of the notice, if my memory is correct. The minimum is $100,000. So if you're proposing a program that is for non-stipended programs, the formula for that is one volunteer per $1,000, one volunteer in an outcome-based assignment per $1,000, right? So if a minimum is 100,000, it has to be one volunteer per $1,000 in an outcome-based assignment. That's 100 volunteers. If you're proposing a stipended program, that formula is one volunteer in outcome-based assignments for every $7,500. So that formula is a little bit different. So minimum amount you can apply for is 100,000, and that's in B2, if my memory is correct. And then later in the notice, it talks about if it's non-stipended, it's one volunteer and outcome-based assignment per $1,000. If it's stipended, it's one volunteer and outcome-based assignment per $7,500. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Robin. I think that we also hit on is there an established grant range or is it based on the agency's budget, where you talked about the minimum?
Yeah. All right, so I'm just going to look through some of the questions here. Thank you for clearing some of those, Kellen. It helps a lot. There's a question regarding, is there a maximum amount that the fund we can request? What is the minimum maximum? Oh, you got that one. So that one is, again, I think it's B2. I should probably pull open the notice, but I believe it's B2. It talks about the minimum is 100,000 and the maximum is 500,000. Remember, you're asking for 2 years worth of funding. So 100,000 and 500,000 on the high end there. There is a question, Kellen, about it's talking about confirming the geographic priority areas. So maybe if you could just highlight what's the difference between what we see on Appendix A and the opportunity to serve in just about any place in the country.
Let's see, I'm looking for that particular question. Can you ask it again? I don't see it in the list here.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do it. So folks, there's a question that talks about where do we want to do programming? This funding opportunity is open to any place in the country. Let me say that again. This funding opportunity is open to any place in the country. We do have Appendix A, which are high priority areas. So those are areas that we know have a low vaccination rate, and we know that they're a high priority for the administration. So Appendix A is those high priority areas, but the funding is open to any community in the United States and territories.
And then just to clarify that the Appendix A is on the competition website, and Robin, you are correct. It is B.2 for the estimated award in the Nofo. So good memory.
There's a question that says, are there sample successful grants we could review? Man, you all are going to test my memory here again. So on our website, AmeriCorps.gov, if you search for open government, as the federal agency, as federal funds, we do post summaries of all grant awards that are done through the agency. But I will say to you folks that ARP funding is still very new, so we haven't awarded a lot of grants right now. We are in the process of awarding our second round of funding, so those haven't hit the open government website yet. But again, the question is successful samples of grants. As a federal agency under open government, there's that information is disclosed for all of our programs. But for ARP, this funding is still brand new. We do not have that information up yet because it hasn't been awarded yet. Thank you. Open government, you just put in there. Thank you so much.
No worries. All right. Okay, so there's a question about diversity. So it says, when we discuss diversity, is it diversity of volunteers or diversity of population served?
That's a great question. And I would like to say all of the above and plus more, right? The administration has been very clear that they want us to use these funds to not only get into communities that don't have AmeriCorps Seniors program, so that would be new and diverse communities that are not currently in our portfolio, but there's also the administration wants us to focus on getting people involved in national service who are not involved currently. And that is across the spectrums of diversity. So we're looking at it at multiple levels. The diversity in our portfolio of the programs that we are funding, everything from large organizations to small organizations, rural communities to urban communities. So getting new programs into our portfolio. And then as well, really working to get those Americans who are not involved in service, get them involved in service. And that spans the scope of what we're looking to do. So all of the above is the answer.
Perfect. All right, thank you. So I know that you touched on it just briefly on the unduplicated volunteers and the VSY. The question is, in the stipend model, how much of the 7,500 has to be paid to the one volunteer? She saw the 1,044 hours times $3 an hour. So maybe we can explain that, but I will give one quick plug that we are going to go into detail with how to calculate those things in next week's presentation for the national performance measures. But Robin, if you want to just briefly respond to their question.
I was actually pulling out my calculator because I want to make sure I give you the right number. So just clarifying, folks, right? Making sure we level set here. The application, there's two ways you could propose your application. You can propose your application to have non-stipended volunteers, or you can propose your application to have stipended volunteers. If you're proposing a stipended volunteer application, the formula is 1,044 hours times $3. That's the total stipend that would be paid out for that one volunteer service year. So it's 1,044 times $3, which comes out to $3,132. So out of that one volunteer service year equals 1,044 hours. We pay $3 per hour. Of the cap of $7,500, $3,132 of that would go to the stipend. The remainder can go to the administrative costs and the support costs to run the program. Does that help? We'll see, huh? If it comes back.
So I know that we went over this briefly as well during the presentation about new applicants, but this question is, do these volunteers need to be new or to the current or can it be current volunteers that they have on the roster?
Yeah, good question. New volunteers, and I say that focusing back to when we talked about some of the mission of what the funding is for. You know, one of the reasons we said is to get into diverse communities that don't have our programs. And the other one is to get people engaged in service who are not engaged in service. So it's new volunteers. We want to get those new folks involved in national service in their local community with this funding.
Perfect, thank you. And then another question about volunteers, do they have to be low income?
So a good question, and this is where it gets nuancy, folks. So stick with me a little bit here. Our non-stipended program, if you're proposing a non-stipended program, there is no income eligibility for that. So again, non-stipended program, no income eligibility. If you are proposing a stipended program, there is an income eligibility. And here's the important nuance. We have two stipend programs in our regular portfolio. One is foster grandparent, one is senior companion. The income eligibility level for those is 200% below the level of poverty. So below 200%. I see a question too, is what do we mean by demonstration projects? So I'm going to throw that in this one as well. You could propose to us that you would like to demonstrate that by raising the income eligibility maybe to 400%, you would get more people involved in service. So that's combining those two questions. So if you're doing a stipended program, yes, there's an income eligibility for those volunteers to receive the stipend. In our traditional programs, it's 200%. But what we're saying to you under this demonstration authority, maybe you make the case to us that if you raise it up to 300%, or if you raise it up to 400%, that you could get more individuals involved in service, more people helping their communities recover. So I hope that helps.
All right, and since we're talking about stipended versus non-stipended, can you just explain the difference aside from the income requirement?
Yeah. So here's again, this opportunity on the demonstration authority is giving us some unique opportunities, but in our traditional program, we have stipend and non-stipended programs. In our traditional programs, our stipend programs are focused on one of two areas, which is our foster grandparent program, which is helping children get those educational attainments that they need to get. Often it's mentoring or help with Head Start, or giving those children and those individuals who need help focus in their education to meet their educational objectives. Our senior companion program is helping to keep seniors living independently in their community. That's our traditional program. Both of those are stipended programs. So under this demonstration authority, if you are looking to do a stipended program, it's in those two areas, but you have some flexibility. So let me be clear on that. We're saying to you under the demonstration authority, if you were interested in doing something that is maybe education-based, and you want to say, you know, the 200% below poverty is really hard, so I want to go up to 400%. So you'd still be demonstrating how getting seniors involved in mentoring and education and youth who have need is the right thing to do, but it would be in that area of education. So that would be one option for the stipend. If you're looking at something to help keep seniors active and engaged in their community, you could say to us, right now, our traditional program says it's a one-to-one relationship. Maybe you want to propose that it's a small group infinity. So the demonstration authority allows you to expand how you can address social isolation or how you can address some of those respite care needs in your community. So that's the stipend side, folks, right? It has some focus there, but we want you to think of what can you do to help meet your community needs in those two areas. The non-stipended program, there's no funds attached to that for volunteers. And there really is a large amount of service opportunities. So it's the performance measures Appendix B. So Appendix B, folks, goes through all of the different service opportunities, community needs that volunteers can address through a non-stipended program. You can do education and healthy futures. There's some work that can be done there in economic opportunity. There's some work that can be done in disaster areas. So the non-stipended has a much more larger scope of service activities in Appendix B. The stipend inside has a limited scope of activities. I hope that helps.
All right, and I think I can take this one. It says, if we currently have a grant with AmeriCorps, would we be eligible for this grant? So just to clarify, this is for new applicants, for those who have never had an AmeriCorps Seniors Grant, or those who have had an AmeriCorps Seniors Grant but do not have an active grant. So you cannot actively have an AmeriCorps Seniors Grant to qualify for this opportunity. Let's see. So there's a question of the funding timeline, and just to clarify, it is for 2 years. But Robin, if you can jump in and kind of further explain, because two people are asking about the length of time. It is a 2-year program.
2-year program, yep.
So does it mean that if we ask for 200,000, we need to have 200 volunteers over 2 years, or is it 200 volunteers per year?
Right, yeah, very important point. So this funding opportunity has a start date of July 1st, 2022, and it will go for 2 years to June 30th of 2024. So that's your 2-year period right there, folks. And you are writing a proposal, the number of volunteers to serve, the number of community members engaged, the outcomes you're going to address over that period of time. So it's a 2-year period of time for program and for fiscal. So if your proposal is that it's going to be 200 volunteers, it's the length of the proposal. So it's a 2-year period. The money and the performance measures are for 2 years, which is different from some of our current funding. So if you've been funded by AmeriCorps Seniors in the past, that is different. And that is truly because of how the ARP funds have been awarded.
So we have several other questions kind of about that 2-year and volunteers and how to count them. One asked is, does the unduplicated count start over in the second year? For instance, can you carry a volunteer over to the second year and count them again in that year?
Yeah, it's a 2-year period, folks. So it's a 2-year period to meet the outcomes and outputs that you put into your performance measures, 2 years to meet the funding level. This is a difficult and tricky question. We get it a lot, and we actually have a really good FAQ on it. So I would go to, make sure you reference the FAQs, folks, on our website. So if you're on our funding page for this opportunity, there's an FAQ section. But it's 2 years. You're asking for the amount of money needed for 2 years, and you're putting in your performance measures what you will achieve in those 2 years. So there's no renewals or continuations in this world right now. ARP is a one-time award at the moment.
All right, and I just put the FAQ link into the chat so that everyone can see that.
So there's a question about can a project utilize both stipend and non-stipended volunteers? Yes, you can, but we would see it as two applications, just because of the nuances of the budget and the nuances of how you do your performance measures. So could an organization submit an application for a stipended program and a non-stipended program? Absolutely. If your community has the need and you fit the terms of the notice, please go forth with an application to put in two applications if that what makes sense for your organization and your community. So I see another question of, can a VSY be split between multiple volunteers? So let's level set again, folks, right? Making sure we're looking at our language the same. So VSY stands for volunteer service year, and that is a stipended program term. So VSY, volunteer service year, that is a stipended program term. We know one VSY equals 1,044 hours of service. And so the question is could multiple volunteers contribute to that 1,044? The answer is yes. Yeah. That is just the formula we have. There's a long story behind it, but that's the formula that we use for funding for stipended programs. But the notice does not state that one VSY must be one person. It typically is, but it is not a must-have.
All right, thank you. Let's see. There's a question, what is 200% of poverty? Can you just kind of direct it where?
I don't know it off the top of my head because it is varied for each of the communities, each of the states and the territories. If you go to our website, folks, AmeriCorps.gov, and I would believe if you could search by just on the search box by poverty, you may get it that way. If not, go to one of the foster grandparent or senior companion tabs, and then you can search by the income eligibility. So we do post the income eligibility for 200% every year on our website. So again, 200% is what is under our traditional funding opportunity. We have encouraged you all under this demonstration authority that you can go up to 400%. So it is on our website. It's posted every year. I would probably search by income eligibility or 200% above poverty, but there is a document on our website. But again, this demonstration authority does give you some flexibilities to make the case that making a different level would be in the best interest of your community for these 2 years. I can see if I can find it while you're looking at the questions.
Yeah, I was trying to find it as well. Maybe it'd be quicker. I found one from a couple years ago, but maybe you can find the most one.
Yeah, let me just see if I can put one in there.
All right. So while you're looking for that, I see a couple comments coming in about the amount of money. And just to clarify, it is for the 2-year period. This is a 2-year grant opportunity. It's not per year. So hopefully that answers a lot of the questions that are coming in about whether it's for 1 year or 2. And then as you're still looking for that, I just want to make another reminder that we, again, can't tell you what to put in your application. There's a couple of questions of, should you do this or should you not? And that's just not something that we can address today.
Yeah, here it is. So let me just copy it and put it inside. So make sure I did the right one. Yeah, so that folks, I just put the link in there, and that's still for the 2021 income eligibility limits. We haven't posted the one for this year. I don't believe it's been released yet. If I remember, I haven't seen it come across yet. Yeah, and it looks like I signed this one in June. So I would imagine it's not going to be out for quite a while. But so you would be able to use this document. Again, our traditional funding requires below 200%. under the demonstration authority for the stipend, you could propose something different if it makes sense for your community.
Yeah. All right. So everyone should be able to see it now.
No, thank you.
No worries.
Oh yeah, I did the wrong one. Okay.
So here's a question. Is there a minimum amount of time a volunteer must work with the organization over that 2-year period in order to be counted in that 100 volunteer minimum?
That's a great question. So is the minimum amount of time a volunteer must serve in order to be counted in it? You all are going to hate my answer, but I'm going to actually say it depends on how you structure your program, right? It depends on how we allow our grantees to determine what an active volunteer is defined as, right? So we do not say that an active volunteer for a non-stipended program is X number of hours. We allow our grantees to define what that means in a program model. So it would depend on a couple of things. I would imagine it would depend on what community needs you're meeting, what your community partners are doing. So I don't mean to sound like I'm being a government bureaucracy, but it truly gives you some flexibility to design a program that meets your community needs. Yeah, I think that's the most honest answer I can give.
All right, perfect. And then are volunteers recruited by the organization, or are they matched up by AmeriCorps?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that the thrust of who we are. AmeriCorps Seniors provides grants to organizations, right, as Kellen described, who's an eligible organization, for you to mobilize volunteers, senior volunteers, to address community needs. So I choose my words carefully there, right? For the organization, the grantee, to mobilize seniors to address critical community needs. We do not have a list of volunteers. So the grant is for the organization who receives our fund, usually for a volunteer coordinator or a project director, and their role is to recruit and identify senior volunteers who want to serve in the program. So it's a community mobilization grant or volunteer coordinator grant. You can think of it that way as well.
And I think that response also lends to the other question is there a registry where we can verify if someone is already a volunteer?
You know, gosh, I would wish there was. No, there's not. That's not. And so we also know that one of the things we're highlighting is getting into new communities, right? So if you're proposing to go into a community that does not have one of our AmeriCorps Seniors programs, the whole community is ready to serve. So you would be free to recruit from wherever. If you happen to go into a community where we do have an AmeriCorps Seniors, you know, you could do some collaborative work with the organization that may have some of our funding, but the grant is for the organization to identify volunteers for service.
All right, let's see, switching a little bit to performance measures. It says, how is it determined that performance measures are met? Are there specific outcomes for each performance measure? So I can take part of it, that the outcomes for each of the measures is in Appendix B, which lists, again, the different focus areas and then the approved outcomes that are applicable to that focus area. Robin, if you want to speak a little bit about how we review the performance measures.
Yeah, you're right on. So Appendix B, folks, is the national performance measures. There are performance, you choose from the performance measures that make sense for your community need and how you're going to address your community need. Inside each of the performance measures is an output and an outcome, and it actually talks about how measured. So for example, if you're doing something in the education area, an output may be the number of students who are going to be served. The outcome could be educational gains or increased attendance. So you want to go study Appendix B, the performance measures, because in each of the performance measures, we identify outputs and outcomes. So you select the ones that make sense for your community, and then you are reporting against those outputs and outcomes. Thank you for putting that in there. And you will also see in each of the performance measures, it says how measured. So it tells you how it has to be measured. There's guidance on how to do it, but read Appendix B and look at it as your options for service.
All right. Let's see. I think this may be helpful to explain that there's a question about submitting more than one application. I know you talked about if you want to do a stipend and a non-stipended, that would be 2 different applications. So just if you, so this, can you submit one application with multiple purposes that serve different priority areas?
So yeah, I think that could be, right? Again, under our demonstration authority that we're using for this funding, we have a significant amount of flexibility for organizations to define what program makes sense for their community need. So again, we want to see you all design programs that meet our funding priorities, that meet the purpose of the funding, but there's a great deal of flexibility. So could a non-stipended program have something that may be related to healthy futures in a food pantry, as well as an education component for non-stipend? Yeah, if that's how you lay out your application, you lay out your community needs, you lay out how it meets the funding requirements, and then you would have maybe 2 performance measures. So absolutely. You could do a single focus, right? If you're looking at just supporting your community with food pantries and the work that needs to be done there as a result of people really being food insecure as we come out of the pandemic, maybe that's a singular focus, but maybe you have that focus of the food pantry, but you also want to do an education component. Again, you have that flexibility. The one thing we say is, a non-stipend application and a stipend application. So those are separate, again, because of the budget implications and just management.
All right, so this is a question that we've actually been receiving through several of our training and technical assistance webinars that we've had, and it is about virtual and remote options. This is, can the programming take place on Zoom because of the high COVID rate, or does it all have to take place in person?
Yeah, that's a great question. Again, the flexibility you have is to lay out an application that meets the funding requirements and identifies community needs and how you're going to address them. At the core of the work of AmeriCorps seniors is we want to keep our volunteers and our community safe, right? If you've seen anything from us in the past 2 years, AmeriCorps seniors has been very focused on keeping our volunteers safe. So I say that to say, it again is how you design your program and you lay it out to us. If you are laying out something for maybe education, right? We know children have taken a hard hit through education through the pandemic, and you're going to do something virtual. We will evaluate your proposal based on what you outline. And if you make a solid case and outline how it's going to be done virtual, we have seen that be successful. I've said it a few times that we want you to demonstrate what makes sense for your community. We want you to see what you all think is the way to use this funding for 2 years to meet critical community needs.
All right, thank you. So there is a question of, is there a site that we can go to see if there is an AmeriCorps senior program in our community? So
yes.
That's our AmeriCorps Senior Pathfinder, correct?
Correct. You could go to there's a tool we have as a Pathfinder. It's on the website where you can actually put in your county and see if there's a program in your county. You could also go to, on our website, AmeriCorps.gov, type in national service in your state, national service in your state, and that will bring up a list of all of the grantees in your state, not only through AmeriCorps seniors, but through our other funding opportunities, other AmeriCorps programs as well. But the Pathfinder would do just AmeriCorps seniors programs. And if you did national service in your state, you would get a pretty impressive scope of the national service we have across the country.
All right, so it looks like we actually have 2 people asking about finding out where AmeriCorps and AmeriCorps seniors are currently participating within the country. Let's see, just looking through some of these others as well. There's a question of, we host over 5,000 volunteers, but not all are seniors. Do we qualify to apply? I think maybe we could respond with who our volunteers need to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, congratulations. Thank you for the work that you all do. The AmeriCorps Seniors Volunteer is 55 and older. That is in our regulations, and that is not something we are doing through the demonstration, right? That's not something that can be changed through the demonstration authority. So AmeriCorps Seniors Volunteer is 55 or older. And you will see that over all of our materials on our website. I believe it's in the section A of the funding notice as well, when it talks about who are 55 and older. So I would refer you back to section A of the notice. Kellen, I don't know if you saw this, but we got that 5-minute check notice that came out up there. And we're getting to the top of the hour.
Yes, yeah, looks like just a couple more minutes. So just as we're looking through, you're going to get a couple more questions responded to. Again, if we aren't able to get to it, or if something else comes up, please email us at americanrescuesdp@cns.gov, especially if we're not able to get your question answered today. As we said, like if it takes a little bit more detail or conversation, we're just not able to go into that today. So please email us those questions.
Folks, I can't say enough about the frequently asked questions that are up there. So I would encourage you to look at those often. The frequently asked questions are really good. And what we do is when we do these webinars and questions that come into our mailbox, we use those to scope out the frequently asked questions. So they are questions we have received in the past, and hopefully they will help you as well. So I would look to those often.
Right. Robert, any others that you want to answer really quickly?
No, I think we have a handful that we weren't able to get to, and I do apologize, but I would encourage you to do, as Kellen said, a couple of things, right? Go to the frequently asked questions. Go to put a question in through our general email box, but I would also encourage you to check out our other webinars, right? I think we highlighted at the beginning that this recording will be posted. All of the recordings are posted. It takes a couple of days for us to do that, but all of our recordings from past webinars and future webinars will be on our website. So really valuable information, folks. I think that's all I have. I give you the last word here.
All right, well, I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. Again, you asked us a lot of great questions, had Robin and I on our toes to get you the answers. Please, if you have any questions, to email us at the email address that's on there. And then again, we have one more training and technical assistance webinar, which is next week on January the 18th at 3 p.m. for the national performance measures. So with that, again, thank you, and have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.